Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo in Quito, Ecuador. This is from the south. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been transferred to intensive care after his coronavirus symptoms had worsened. Johnson was admitted to the hospital in London Sunday evening with persistent COVID-19 symptoms. Earlier Monday, British officials had given assurances that his condition was stable. For the meantime, Dominic Raab has been designated to take over should Johnson become incapacitated. The World Health Organization has condemned suggestions by some European scientists that potential vaccines for the new coronavirus should be tested on Africans. The French scientists triggered an uproar last week after their utterances, prompting several people from Africa, including football stars Didier Drogba and Samuel Eto'o, to rebuke the two French professors.
There was, I think, a comment last week from some couple of scientists who said the testing ground for the new vaccines will be Africa. To be honest, I was so appalled, and it was a time when I said, when we needed solidarity, this kind of racist remarks actually would not help. It goes against the solidarity. Africa cannot and will not be a testing ground for any vaccine. We will follow all the rules to test any vaccine or therapeutics all over the world using exactly the same rule. Whether it's in Europe, Africa, or wherever, we will use the same protocol, and if there is a need to be tested elsewhere, to treat human beings the same way, equally. And the hangover from a colonial mentality has to stop. And WHO will not allow this to happen. And it was a disgrace, actually, and appalling to hear during the 21st century from scientists that kind of remark. And we condemn this with the strongest terms possible. But we assure you that this will not happen in Africa.
Our correspondent Pablo Navarrete spoke with international analyst Carlos Martinez about the British government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
What we're seeing from the British government, much like what we're seeing from the US government, is really a classic case of too little too late. It's not like we didn't have any notice, any warning. China introduced a very strict lockdown across the country from the 23rd of January. They didn't just take action in Wuhan, they took precautionary measures throughout the country specifically to avoid a major outbreak. For every case, isolation, treatment, contact tracing, mass testing, social distancing, wearing masks, all sorts of measures to ensure that people didn't lose their livelihoods. And much the same approach was taken in Vietnam, and in both cases, the results have been very good. So we know for a fact that the virus can be contained. But the British government had basically nothing to say about the coronavirus until the second week of March, by which time there'd already been several hundred confirmed cases and probably tens of thousands of unconfirmed cases. When they did finally comment on it, they proposed this so-called herd immunity, which basically means letting most of the population get the virus. In Boris Johnson's words, you take it on the chin, basically meaning that hundreds of thousands of older people and people with weaker immune systems will die. In other words, it's an exercise in mass social Darwinism in order to protect the economy. And they're still following that to some degree. There's a lockdown, but millions of people still have to go to work because the guidelines are to still go to work if you can't work from home. So for millions of people, that means having to make a choice between spreading the virus or not being able to pay your bills and put food on the table. It's really important that we don't blame people who have to make those impossible choices. The government needs to close all non-essential workplaces, compensate the workers, get mass testing in place, and ensure that health workers have everything they need to do their work safely. It's an absolute travesty that this hasn't happened already, but it absolutely must happen now.
Spain is continuing to register COVID-19 fatalities and new infections despite the announcement by authorities that the virus is slowing down. The health ministry has reported that at least 637 more people have died in the last 24 hours from the novel coronavirus, bringing the total number to 13,055. The ministry also reported 19,400 health workers being infected.
The total number of confirmed cases today is 135,032 people, which means 4,273 new cases, comparing to yesterday. Based on these numbers, the rise in case is 3% compared to yesterday. The total number of deceased people is 13,055, and the fatalities yesterday were 637. More than 40,000 people have already been discharged, 40,437, and that means almost 30% of registered cases.
Following the confirmation of a COVID-19 case at the Malakasa camp in Greece, migrants have protested demanding COVID-19 tests to be done on all of them. The protesting migrants held banners denouncing the risky living conditions at the camp. The camp is the second Greek migrant camp placed under lockdown after a resident tested positive for the coronavirus. Iran has indicated that it was not going to ask for assistance from the United States for its battle against COVID-19, arguing that the Trump administration wanted to take advantage of the situation to bring the country to its knees. Iran has 60,500 COVID-19 cases confirmed so far, and the country has been facing challenges of assessing necessary medications due to sanctions imposed by the U.S.
Look, we have not made and will not make any request to the United States of America to send medical and health assistance to the Islamic Republic of Iran. It is not our policy to request help from the statesmen of the American regime. What they are seeking, and have revealed as well, is to keep Iran in its difficult situation and predicament, so that they can take advantage of it until the Iranian nation is worn out and desperate and goes to the negotiating table.
In China, Wuhan authorities are preparing to lift most of the city's restrictions as COVID-19 cases continue to decline. Wuhan was the epicenter of the now global pandemic, having confirmed the first case. The city has since been under strict lockdown measures for more than 2 months, during which only essential workers and those with special permission were allowed to move around. Wuhan accounts for about 60% of China's total infections, which stands at more than 81,000. People will be allowed to leave the city on April 8th.
It will definitely change things. Vehicles will be able to flow again when it happens. Right now, vehicles are basically stuck in neighborhoods. After the restrictions are lifted on April 8th, vehicles will be able to go in and out. People who need to come back to Wuhan will choose to return. But for some others, they really have some psychological pressure and don't want to go to Wuhan for the time being. There's this kind of situation.
While European countries have reported a decrease in new infections, the U.S. continues battling with COVID-19. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has warned that the state's healthcare system is overwhelmed and was running short on supplies. Almost 340,000 cases have been confirmed in the U.S., with New York being the most affected, with above 123,000 confirmed cases. Meanwhile, stock markets have started to show signs of improvement following announcements that COVID-19 cases are decreasing in many countries. U.S. stocks rose by more than 3% in the first few minutes of trading, following similar gains in Europe and Asia. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Back to From the South. We go now to Nicaragua for more about the measures being taken to combat the COVID-19 pandemic.
Across all of Nicaragua's borders, prevention measures are mandatory for anyone trying to enter the nation. People have their temperature checked and vehicles are disinfected.
We are working under the framework of free trade. The better we strengthen free trade, the better. Let's fight against the effect of this pandemic. One of the recommendations that have been made at the international level is to strengthen our economic and social integration. Since we already have a social and economic integration, we must strengthen it.
In this area, Dina sells lottery tickets as her only source of income. She lives with her 3 kids facing the COVID-19 pandemic. She takes prevention measures and hopes that the cases do not keep rising.
Let's suppose that the government said that we are going under quarantine, but I'm one of those people that if I don't work, I don't have anything to take home at the end of the day by day, to bring food to my house. But what will happen if I stay home?
Analyst Adolfo Pastran says that this country has been carrying an economic crisis on its back since 2018 as a consequence of opposition violence and the attempted coup. That year, the country has been trying to reactivate the economy.
Small and medium businesses have been the ones that have helped the economy get reactivated. So a quarantine like the one that other countries have applied, it will hit Nicaragua severely, and mostly the informal sectors, which are the ones people depend the most on. They work on their own, live day by day.
In March, Central American leaders signed an agreement in areas like health, security, justice, immigration, and commerce.
A team of 101 Cuban nurses arrived in Barbados on Sunday to assist in the local battle against COVID-19. They were welcomed by the Barbadian Minister of Health, Ambassador David Commission, and the Ambassador of Cuba. Prime Minister Mia Mottley welcomed them from her social media following their 5-hour travel from Havana on 2 specially chartered Liat flights. They were also given a warm welcome by the Cuban-Barbadian Friendship Association. On their first full day in Barbados, the Cuban Nurse Brigade visited the monument to the martyrs, paying respect to the 73 passengers and crew who were killed in the bombing of Cubana Flight 455 off the coast of Pains Bay, Barbados on October 6, 1976. The crime was carried out by CIA-linked terrorists. Cuba's Director of Epidemiology for the country's Minister of Health has confirmed 30 new cases on the island after 753 tests were being carried out, bringing the total number of COVID-19 cases to 350.
Cuba registers 350 confirmed COVID-19 cases. That means 5.8% of the tests that have been taken are positive. The 30 new cases have to do with 29 Cubans and 1 foreigner from Tanzania. Out of the 350 confirmed cases, 309 are stable. 9 people have passed away. 2 have been taken to their home countries, the United States and Canada, respectively. 18 patients that have been discharged. 8 patients are in critical condition and 4 in serious condition.
The number of confirmed cases in St. Kitts and Nevis stands at 10 as the government has called for 14 days of partial restrictions to slow the spread.
Today, St. Kitts and Nevis reports 10 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with 0 deaths. To date, 183 persons have been tested with 10 confirmed positive, 114 confirmed negative, and 59 results pending.
Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Timothy Harris, says he wants his country to be the first to overcome the COVID-19 and that they are well equipped to do so.
While we started with the understanding it was just the extremely old, we are seeing also that very young people are now part of the vulnerable group. In fact, all of us are part of the vulnerable group. So each one of us can do something. Wash our hands regularly and properly. Boost our immune system. Undertake social distancing. Wear the mask as often as you can. These are things that a disciplined people must do. What I would wish is that we do those things that are within our power to do. Stay at home. stay at home.
Trinidad and Tobago has extended and intensified stay-at-home measures as the country has recorded its 8th COVID-19 death with 105 positive patients this Monday.
The government takes the position that the stay-at-home will go until April 30th, and we will take additional action to intensify the compliance of that instruction. Not relax it, intensify the compliance, because that is what is required to deal with the problem that we are dealing with. It is not a question about preserving your comfort zone. It is not a question about preserving your earning capacity. It is not a question about equalizing co-ethnic behavior. It is not a question about accepting and exploiting political opportunity to create mayhem. It is simply a question of whether we live or whether we die.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. More than 9,300 COVID-19 cases have been confirmed in Africa as countries continue to heighten prevention and control measures against the spread of the virus in their region. South Africa is among the most affected countries with COVID-19 cases, almost reaching 1,700, and at least 11 people reported dead. The second most affected is Algeria with 1,320 positives, followed by Egypt and Morocco with 1,173 and 1,021 confirmed cases, respectively. Residents from an Ivory Coast town, Abidjan, have protested against the government's decision to build a coronavirus health center within their neighborhood. Residents said they feared the location of the COVID-19 center could expose them to a higher risk of contacting the coronavirus. Police fired tear gas to disperse the protesters, and government officials later came to engage locals on the need for the facility. Ivory Coast has 261 confirmed cases and 3 people have already died from the virus.
If they are releasing funding, they should build their centers outside the town. I just don't get it. We are humans too. The whole world is fighting against the virus, and yet it's here, in the middle of the city, that they come and install their center.
And still in Africa, 20 soldiers have been killed in a militant attack in Mali. The insurgents struck a military base in the northern town of Bamba. Government officials have said investigations are ongoing and that the death toll might rise as some of the security forces have been injured. The attack is suspected to have been carried out by a jihadist group. Tons of medical supplies provided by China to Africa have arrived in Ghana. The medical consignment arrived at the airport in the capital Accra and is part of China's assistance to African countries' fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The World Food Programme is set to help distributing the aid to 18 African countries affected by the coronavirus. Senegalese fishermen have not spared by the coronavirus as thousands have been forced to suspend trade due to the virus outbreak. Fishing is one of the country's top export earners and has been disrupted by the introduction of restrictions in Europe and by a lockdown put in place by the Senegalese government to reduce the spread of the COVID-19. Senegal's fishing industry employs around 53,000 people directly and over 500,000 people indirectly.
My parents own boats and my big brothers go and fish. But now they have been docking for a long time because of the coronavirus. Because even if they catch the fish, we cannot sell it. So they stay at home. Only as the fishmongers come to work, but we do not earn anything anymore. And all that is because of the coronavirus.
Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has imposed a 3-week ban on movement in and out of 4 main coronavirus-infected areas, which include the capital Nairobi ahead of the Easter weekend.
The cessation of movement within the counties of Kilifi, Kwale, and Mombasa shall be for an initial containment period of 21 days with effect from 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 8th of April, 2020.
Now back in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has once again cautioned the United States to abide by international law as the country has deployed warships and troops near Venezuela amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Rowley was speaking in a one-on-one interview with CCN TV6.
I'm sure that at the end of the day, common sense and good sense would prevail in Washington. Unfortunately, the maneuvers are taking place in our neighborhood. And we in Trinidad and Tobago, our position has been made very clear at the United Nations last September. And it may have been missed by many persons because you might ask, what do we want? What do we expect? What we want is international business being conducted and a rules-based formula. That there are rules that all the countries of the world in the United Nations, we have agreed to abide by those rules. And once we respect the rules-based formulae, everything's going to be all right.
The Guyanese Elections Commission, or GECOM, has agreed to a national recount of votes cast in the March 2nd general elections. GECOM spokeswoman Yolanda Wardy says the process will be done in chronological order from regions 1 to 10. This comes after the full court on March 31st threw out an injunction by a Partnership for National Unity and Alliance for Change party against a recount in Region 4. Authorities have faced criticism over the credibility of the tabulation and declaration of results as both the APNU plus AFC and People's Progressive Party Civic declare themselves the winner. While non-stop global news about the effects of the coronavirus have become commonplace, so too are the stories about the kindness of strangers. In the U.S. capital of Washington, D.C., Vida Senior Center has recorded exercise classes taught in Spanish with the aim of keeping older adults engaged during the pandemic with a touch of Latin flair. Besides exercise videos, the group has also recorded their nutrition tips and relaxation classes and shared information about COVID-19. The center is also offering health and counseling sessions over the phone, among other services. And we end with a catchy song from four St. Lucia's soca artists about the novel coronavirus, sang in French Creole.
Touche bouchou, pas touche zio, weste caillou, ma wepio, protecte famille, quand ça caille ou pas katan, police kay bawo. Couvre bouchou avant pousser,